Welcome to Animals Everywhere. I'm Elaine, your host. What weighs up to 2,000 pounds, looks like a walrus, and is often mistaken as a mermaid? That would be the manatee, and today we're going to learn all about them. The crew of Animals Everywhere traveled to Crystal River, Florida to swim with the manatees. Now, Florida is known for all their beautiful wildlife and their exotic birds, but we're here to swim with the manatees, and to help us find them and to show us what to do, we found the perfect captain, Captain Tracy. Well, she was the perfect captain until she made us get up at the break of dawn just to get on the boat. I'm not really a morning person. Manatees were once thought to be related to the walrus because they look very similar. But scientists found out through genetics, kind of like CSI, that they're mostly related to elephants. In the time I spent with Tracy, I realized this was the perfect career for her because of her extreme passion for the manatees. She knows everything there is to know about these docile mammals. Now, before we even saw a manatee, Tracy filled us in on the rules, so we knew what to do or what not to do when we got in the water with them.
You can touch them with one hand. Anything else other than just floating nice and easy on the surface of the water is considered harassment. If you chase them or hug them or pinch their little cheeks, or no tackling, no. Not even any kissing, which would be really nice sometimes. They can kiss us, but we can't kiss them.
Oh, really?
And they do like to kiss us on occasion.
Manatees don't have blubber like most marine mammals. As a matter of fact, they're mostly muscle. They have a thin layer of blubber that's probably about as thick as this wetsuit. Manatees come to places like Crystal River because of its warm water springs, like the Three Sisters, or the warm water discharge from power plants. The warm water springs found in Florida is pretty much just a great big hole that warm water comes out of constantly. Now, I wanted to take a closer look, so I threw on a tank and I dove in. Don't worry, I wouldn't forget to bring cameraman Peter with me. The big spring that I was at is found at the Three Sisters. And the reason why they call it the Three Sisters is because there's three great big springs in one area.
And it's exactly 72 right at the springs.
If the water temperature drops below 68 degrees Fahrenheit, they can die from hypothermia.
And they can go into hypothermic very quickly.
Really?
Yes, they're actually, and like I said earlier, they get colds a lot. If they get into water that's just a little bit too cold, they will immediately get a cold and start blowing snot all over us.
Really? Okay, it's time for us to suit up and get in the water. So we don't get sick and start blowing snot all over Tracy, we put on wetsuits because we too get cold. Even though the water is a constant 72 degrees, I know I would have frozen my little tail off given the amount of time we're going to spend in the water. Every new encounter with all these different animals we've worked with has always taken my breath away. But when we first got in the water with these magnificent beasts, I really did hyperventilate. Because when we first got in the water, a really large female came up and stuck her face right in my face.
They will oftentimes go just like this. And they'll touch you with they'll put their mouth right on your face.
I'm pretty sure it was the size of her that made me gasp. Before we got in the water, Tracy not only explained the rules for touching a manatee, but she also explained that we had to be real slow and quiet. We learned that Tracy was not only smart, but she was right because the manatees kept swimming away from us in the beginning because we were as quiet and as gentle as a bunch of elephants. I'm not joking. It was like we were doing an elephant dance. After a while, we got used to the water and we slowed down. We stopped kicking and splashing, and sure enough, the manatees came to play with us and get their tummies rubbed. It was pretty cool when the manatees rolled over so we could rub their tummy. They also like to spin around. One way manatees entertain themselves is by chewing ropes from the boats.
When manatees are being really playful, they like to chew on ropes, and this is what they do.
This little guy here was going crazy with the rope on Tracy's boat.
That is so sweet.
They also like to chew on the TV host from Animals Everywhere. As you can see, this little guy here started chewing on my arm like it was corn on the cob. Then he ended up on my hands, which was really cool feeling because you can actually feel the whiskers on his mouth.
Just like the elephant, manatees have tactile hairs all over their body.
You can see all the tactile hairs all over Betsy's face. It kind of tickled when I was petting her. The best part is when he started chewing on my mask. But don't worry, he can't hurt me.
Manatees don't have front teeth, but they do have back molars that help them chew their vegetation.
So it's like they're teething all the time because they're gumming everything. Because they constantly chew their vegetation, it tends to wear down those back molars.
They do grind their teeth down pretty good because when they're eating the grass and the seaweed and the different plants that are in the water, they're constantly getting sand in there. It grinds their teeth down. So they will just spit one out, and there's another one right there behind it.
A lot of animals constantly replace their teeth. The other unique thing about the way the manatee eats is their lips.
Manatees have a split upper lip, and they use them like opposable fingers to gather food.
They grab the food with their little prehensile fingers and push the food to the back of their mouth where their teeth are so that they can eat it.
The Florida manatee eats over 60 species of vegetation, and they eat 6 to 8 hours a day.
Because they eat so much vegetation, they can get pretty gassy. As you can see here, those bubbles are not air coming out of a bathing suit. Now, another interesting bit of information about them is they don't really drink water. They get all their fluids from the vegetation they eat. Unfortunately, Crystal River, like most places in this area, are having a problem with a plant called Lingbia that is choking out the manatee's food source. As you can see, this is all Lingbia. It gets really hard to swim through the Lingbia once it rises to the surface. In the summer, the gases bring the Lingbia up to the surface. Another problem the manatees have is injuries from getting hit by boats. This often happens when they surface to breathe.
They have to surface every 3 to 5 minutes to take a breath of air, but when they're sleeping, they can stay down for 20 minutes.
Manatees sleep so much they sleep more than my dog. We ran into a herd of manatees that were sleeping, and it was the funniest thing because it looked like they were taking turns surfacing, and then they would sink right back down to the bottom. Some of them actually landed kind of hard.
Obviously, they have to come up and breathe. So what they will do is it's kind of like half of their brain is shut down so that they can go to sleep. The other half is still awake enough to say, we need some air, we need some air.
Oh, that's like a dolphin.
Yeah.
Oh.
So they just sort of rise up, get some air, and sink right back down again. And that's actually oftentimes is when they get hit. They're very easy to miss when they're sleeping. They just barely break the surface and just enough to get there some air.
So far during the show, there's only been a couple manatees that didn't have big propeller scars on them. I know I speak for the whole crew of Animals Everywhere when I say it's enough to make you want to cry. Boat propellers do cause some injuries to the manatees, but the most serious injuries are caused from getting hit by the hull of the boat. The blunt trauma from the hull of the boat can crack a rib, puncture a lung, and even cause brain damage if they get hit in the head, which is often the case. The good news is, to try and avoid these injuries, they've reduced the boating speed in the canalways to idle speed.